Okay, students, here we are then with a third idea of why Isaiah 58:8 works. Remember, your light will break out like the dawn, and your recovery will speedily spring forth. Why? Okay, now we're just going to go a little bit longer and give you a menagerie of things that fasting does. Here we go. This was done in 1997. That is 25 years ago. We knew this. And this says calorie intake and aging. Basically, the more you eat, the shorter you live. And that has been known now for a long time. This is the first studies that came out. This is with a bunch of mice. And they fed them all they wanted. They cut it to 85, cut it to 50, cut it to 40. And they did this at 1 month of age. So 1 month of age is kind of like a teenager for them because they only live, 48 months anyway, 30 months, depending on how much they eat. So here we go. It shows a normally fed moose, or in your case, mouse. It shows that on average, they lived here about 50. They lived about 30 months. So that's normal feeding. A mouse lives 2.5 years. And then you restrict them a little bit with 85 calories in the yellow, they live longer. You restrict them more, they live a little longer. A little more restriction, they live a little longer. Well, there's a point where you don't have enough calories and you're dead. So we don't want to do that. But that's not what we're doing here. We're just cutting down the number of calories. So here you can see the mouse is living to be about 30 months, and you come out here and it's about 50 months. That's like a 66% increase in lifespan. That's quite amazing. So if you want to live longer, if you want to live 66% longer, all you need to do is cut back on the amount of food you eat. And that's true if you're a mouse, but you are not a mouse. And so we have to look at, what does this do to humans? This is a study in 2013 then, and it just shows a variety of things. First, bacteria. The little tiny cells. If you feed them all that they can eat in 48 hours, they're done. But if you cut that and you cut down what they're eating, and they can end up living here. So 50% here is about maybe, 15, 20 hours. And then 50% here is 48 hours. So you can go from 15 to 48. You can increase your whole lifespan by 400%. That's pretty good. Instead of living to 80, you can live to be 400. Well, that's once again if you're a bacteria. So you'll see the tiniest things live longer with less food. Here's a yeast that's a little bit bigger, so their lifespan might increase by double. And then here's a worm getting a little bit bigger. It's going from 20 to 30, so it might be 50% also. And then here's a mouse that we saw. It's not nearly 50% more, but they do live longer. So promoting health and longevity through diet, this study came out in 2015. And all this shows is we found out that lifespan increases with everything. It increases longer with the mosquito, less with the rat, and even less with the monkey. Now, what about humans? Do we really know? Well, we don't know for sure because of this. We take mice and we put them in a cage their whole life for all, 36 months, and they get to eat just what we give them, and then they pass on to their reward. With humans, people don't want to do that. Say, okay, I want you to give your life, and we're going to give you all the calories, a third of the calories, 50% of the calories, and we're going to let you sit in this box and eat that your whole life. Well, you can't do that with humans because they really are opposed to being caged up for an entire lifetime. And so you can't do that with humans. So do we know that this works for sure with humans? No, but it sure looks like it does compared to all the other things that we have, the information that we have from animal studies. So longevity tends to increase. Unraveling the health effects of fasting, a long road from obesity treatment to healthy lifespan. This is different now. This is not talking about a lifespan, it's talking about a healthy lifespan. Well, that would be nice too, to increase health throughout the lifespan that we have. So the question you might have now is, what do you mean by fasting? What kinds of fasting work and what are they? So here they are. We can thank this author for this. There is calorie restriction. So there are people that eat minimalist, 70% of the normal calorie intake without malnutrition. There's a group at Washington University in St. Louis, and they've been doing this minimalistic eating, severe calorie restriction. that you're always eating, 20, 30% less than what you need, they're all very skinny. And they eat really well because they're eating lots of salads and whole foods, but they don't eat near what they need, and they're always under eating. Well, that is an option, and you can do that. And it seems to have abundant health benefits to do that. Next, we have intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, when you hear that term, it can mean two things. It can mean alternate day fasting, or it can mean time restricted fasting. And so alternate day fasting, you eat one day, you don't eat the next. Generally, it's not quite that barbaric. If you go down to the next one, you've got periodic fasting that's 5-2. And so you can eat all the time you want and then not eat the next day, eat, don't eat. But that's just almost hard. It's almost impossible to do. The impossible thing is to get enough food in the day that you eat to make up for the day that you didn't eat. So people I've had try this brutally, just this way, 0 calories on the opposite day, full eating the one day, it makes for a hectic lifestyle too. So people have done it. I don't recommend it, but people have done it. So what I recommend, time restricted fasting, this is you can eat as much as you want, but you shrink the amount of time that you do it. We talked about that a little bit already. And that is, the smaller you make the window that you eat, the more time your body has to fast. And so I tend to eat within a 6-hour period. I tend to eat from 10 to 4. Now I miss it, and some days I eat 8, and some days I just eat all day long because I'm traveling or something, and I just do. But generally, I keep it to 6 hours. Most people that do this time-restricted fasting keep it to 8 hours. Now, still that's a benefit, because if you eat in 8 hours, you've got 16 hours that you fast. Unlike most people that eat in the morning and then snack before they go to bed, and they get 8 hours of fasting. Just eating within an 8-hour period gives you 16 hours of fasting. Now, is that enough to do anything? Well, we have a study that shows that in just a minute. So I tend to do that. Sometimes I eat in 4 hours, but I know some people that eat 1 meal a day. Is that healthy? It sure can be. If you get enough calories in and you can eat those calories in 1 meal, more power to you. I have done that sometimes, but not very long, because I just can't get enough food in. And then I'm just starving for a long period of time before I get to the next meal. And I don't know that you have to do that. Then this periodic fasting 5-2, you can just cut the calories down on 2 days a week to 600 calories, 400 to 600 calories. So you eat your normal 5 days a week, and then 2 days, you don't eat nothing. You just cut it back so much that your body starts going into a fasting mode anyway, because it didn't have enough food. So that's a possibility too. And then long-term fasting or prolonged fasting. This was done kind of as a weight loss thing 20, 30 years ago, where you'd eat just minimal, 200 to 250 calories a day, and have a long-term prolonged fast. You can do that. You can have a water-only fast. That's nothing. You can do that for weeks, months, and years. I was going to show you a study that had people in it that were 300 pounds. So this was done back when I was in school, and well, a little before that, I was reading about in the 60s and 70s that they were doing a lot of this, just fasting. You just don't eat anything. You take people that are very overweight, you give them water, and you give them electrolytes, because you've got to have electrolytes, because you don't make them. You need to eat them. And so it would be the salt, the potassium, the things you need, the magnesium in the water, but they would just give them water and they would go. Now, I think this is true. I had a doctor friend of mine in Chicago that I really trust. His name is Dr. Nemec, and he's got the Total Health Institute in Chicago, and he's working there today, that he had patients that were very overweight that he fasted on water only for months. I said, how long is the longest one? He said 6 months, sometimes longer than that. And I thought, wow, that would be a lifestyle change to not eat for 6 months. But if I did that, then I'd be gone after about month 2, because I don't have enough stuff to hold me. So water fasting, 0-calorie diet, you can do it. Is it healthy? It's amazingly healthy to do it once in a while. I've never done that because I just never had enough body mass to actually do it. But I have gone for 6 days, I think is the longest I've ever gone. And you do get benefit by doing that. You have to be careful. We might talk about that later. If you come off of one of those fasts, you have to be careful, because you're not Jesus. And Jesus didn't eat for 40 days, but he was being miraculous. He's Jesus for one. And so you can eat nothing, drink nothing, but that's a hard thing to do. That's a supernatural fast. And so you have to have water. So all of these no calorie are water. because it's hard to live without water for more than a few days. And then the very low calorie diet, again, that was popular back in the 60s and 70s, where you not just zero here in this, but they had this very low calorie diet. It was somewhat problematic for a number of reasons that we can't get into right now. But can you do this healthily? Yes, you can. You can cut it down and eat 1,000 calories. The problem is, in all of this, I'm not talking about dieting, really. It does work for that, but we'll barely even talk about that in this course that we're doing right now. But very low calorie diets can work. And then fasting mimicking diet is 800 to 1,000 calories. 5 days of calorie reduction on protein diet, and it cycles. So you don't do this every day, this fasting mimicking diet. You do that for a few days, and then you eat normally, and then you eat some days and you eat normally. Does the fasting mimicking diet work? It seems to have benefits also. Now, this is just an overall picture. We went through the two things on what it does, but there's a myriad of things that it does. So we're just going to start here on the left. And blood, ketones go up. We already talked about that. Adiponectin levels change, cortisol, sugar and insulin levels drop. Triglycerides drop. Inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, they drop. So many benefits just by not eating periodically, or in the case that I recommend for most people, not everybody, is to eat a smaller window. Then liver, what happens? Again, ketones go up, insulin becomes more sensitive, glycogen production goes down, liver size goes down. In the intestines, ketone bodies go up again. So ketones are there, they can be produced there in the intestine also. Insulin sensitivity goes up, structure and function of the muscular skeleton system goes up. And then brain, oh, the brain. The one I love so much. What goes up? Hunger response goes up, cognition goes up, stress resistance goes up, inflammation and oxidative stress go down. Cardiac system, resting heart rate drops, blood pressure drops, pancreas, insulin drops. And in the adipose tissue, lipolysis goes through the roof. That just means you're breaking down the fat that you have. And insulin sensitivity increases, fat mass goes down, inflammation goes down. That's just one big picture. And we'll talk about more of these things. You can ask questions below, and we can try and answer those questions. But this is the broad picture of what it does. We're going to talk about 3 or 4 specific things now that it does. Fasting produces ketones. Which kind of dieting produces enough? Does the periodic time-restricted fasting actually produce ketones? Well, we happen to find a study on that. This is Matson, 2017. Again, this is a HHS publication. And we'll go through this in pieces. And so we're going to start here with this line here. This is midnight, and this is noon. So you eat here at 6 in the morning, and this is glucose, it goes up. And then at noon, you eat again, and blood sugar goes up. At dinner at 6, you eat again, it goes up again. Have a snack at night, it goes up again. And then here's midnight, you finally go to bed somewhere in here, and you eat again at 6 in the morning. And so blood sugar doesn't go up all night, but then it goes up for breakfast, it goes up for lunch, it goes up for dinner, and for the snack. Now, here's the ketone. How much ketone did you make in the entire day of the American system of eating? How much did you make? None. You don't get any. All right, so here then is the 1-day fast. This is the 5-2 intermittent fasting, where you eat breakfast, you eat lunch, you have dinner at 6, and then nighttime comes, morning at 8, you don't eat. And then 12 comes, you still haven't eaten. And all of a sudden, ketones are starting to go up. Between 12 noon and 12 midnight, they keep going up. And by the time it gets to the next morning for breakfast at 6 a.m., you have all kinds of ketone production here in a 36-hour fast, a 1 day. Stopping eating at night, at one night, and don't eat until you skip dinner that night, it's 24 hours, and you go to the next morning, 36 hours. Look at the amount of ketones you produce. Now, this was my question. I wanted to know, does what I do with time-restricted fasting, where I'm just restricting the time interval, does it work? All right, well, here it shows it. Here you eat, this is 12 p.m. So this is 2 to 8, I think it is. Oh, this is because noon to about 2 to 8. So it's 6 or 8 hours. This is 18 hours. And so it's 6-hour fasting. So what happens, or 6 hours eating? You have breakfast, sugar goes up, doesn't have time to go down, sugar goes up, sugar goes up. And so you stop eating. You start it at 2 in the afternoon, you end at 8 at night, and then you don't eat. And so midnight comes, and then here's breakfast, and you don't eat breakfast. And so you don't eat breakfast, and so here's sometime in the morning, your blood ketones start to go up. You don't eat 6, 8, 10, 12. You don't eat until 2 again, because you're on this between 2 and 8 at night eating pattern. So you eat it, and look at that, ketones have gone up. So ketones go up for a period of 4 to 6 hours every day if you go on this time-restricted fasting in a 6-hour window. So you can see if you cut this down to an 8-hour window, you're going to eat for a little bit longer, you'll see that ketones build up on that too, but just not as much. And so when you have, I just eat for 8 hours, you fast for 16, you've got this bit of ketones happening every single day. So does it work? Yes. Do you get a lot more shot if you go ahead and do this and just don't eat for a day? Yes, you do. And this is very beneficial to do that periodically. But to do this all the time is an amazing benefit for your body producing ketones. In addition to energy then, what else do ketones do? I really hesitated to show you this, and I don't want anybody to freak out. Because you see, when I get done, I want you inspired. I don't want you to expire. And so if I give you so much stuff that you go, oh, this is too much for my brain, but I'm going to give it a shot. You're all students, and so you can handle this. All right, I'll explain this diagram, so don't freak out. Here it is. This could be my favorite diagram. Maybe the other one is. Here we've talked about this before. When you have ketones, what do you get? You get fuel. You get fuel for your brain, and that's amazingly wonderful. But it does so many other things. We're going to talk about them. It improves the antioxidants in your body, so that's amazing. It improves mitochondrial function. So the mitochondria, remember, is the powerhouse of the cell. It increases its function. Okay. And then down here, this is histone deacylase. It decreases it. Okay, what does that do? It protects against ALS and Parkinson's disease. But what it really does is it increases CREB. So this is cyclic AMP response binding. It goes up. What does that do? It increases BDNF. What is BDNF? It is brain-derived neurotrophic factor. When I was in college, and before I was a believer in drinking too much, and people say, don't do that, that's going to kill your brain cells, you'll never get them back again. Well, lo and behold, you do. And we call that neuroplasticity, where our brain cells can actually build themselves again. So if you think, oh man, I haven't been thinking clearly what's on my brain cells, yeah, you build them. You can build them. And how do you build them? Well, you can build them by having ketones in your body that take this. This is a sirtuogen. This is the #1 regulator of enzyme systems in the body. The sirtuins are the main enzymes that regulate almost everything. And so they do this, increase BDNF. The sirtuin 1 goes down here. It decreases programmed cell death. It decreases amyloid beta. That's what ends up in the brain when people have Alzheimer's. So it decreases amyloid beta. It increases mitochondrial biogenesis. You build more energy building factors in your body. That's amazing. So now we're going to go up. We're going to go up to this. So hypoxia-induced factor. This goes up and it increases the size of brain capillaries. My goodness, next time you get hungry, don't go, oh my goodness, I'm hungry, I'm starving. You can go, wow, I'm building ketones. My body is cleaning itself up. My brain capillaries are expanding. I'm building new brain tissue. This is amazing. I feel wonderful. Okay, and so ketones also decrease mTOR. And again, it does a variety of things, but what it does mainly in this case is it increases macroautophagy. So ketones actually increase your body's desire and ability to clean itself up with macroautophagy. Isn't that amazing? So you can sit down, and I've sat down with this diagram and just stared at it for a while and just think, this is amazing, what it does, what ketones do, and what macroautophagy does for our bodies. Okay, fine. A couple of things now specifically about a couple of diseases. This is an interesting study because it had 6 patients who were fasted before chemotherapy. Wow, don't you need to eat before chemotherapy? No, no, you don't. As a matter of fact, going into chemotherapy fasted seems to be amazing. And then here, fast a little bit after, a few hours after to a day after. Give your body a chance to rest after being bombarded by chemotherapy. The red line is eating ad lib. Blue line is fasting. So here you've got fatigue twice as much with eating, weakness twice as much, hair loss a little bit more, headaches twice as much, vomit, nausea 5 times as much, vomiting. Well, what do you know? If you don't eat and you don't have anything in your stomach and you go into chemotherapy, there's nothing there to vomit. And so the things you think of with what happens in chemotherapy, you think of hair loss, you think of nausea, you think of vomiting, you think of diarrhea. There's none. There's no vomiting, no diarrhea, there's nothing, because you're giving your intestines a break while they're being bombarded with chemotherapy. And then abdominal cramps are less, mouth sores, dry mouth, all of these things are less when you go in fasted. That's just one little piece of fasting that I had to show you. There's so much, because I have hundreds and hundreds of slides on fasting. And so I thought, I don't want you to expire. I want you to be inspired. So we'll do a couple more here. This is then medium chain triglycerides and Alzheimer's disease. I always wondered, can you take, you hear things like this does something, but can you get an effective dose of it to actually do that thing? Well, what this shows is that for your brain to function, it needs to be up here close to 90%. So you got a healthy young person and their ketones are low because they don't eat much ketone. And so it doesn't matter because their brain's functioning up here anyway. And then here you have an older adult with memory problems. And so this light blue is ketones and the dark blue is glucose. So now you're seeing that they're not making much ketone, but they're just mildly impaired. And then you start having memory loss because your energy levels in your body have dropped below the line of about 88%, where you need to have good cognitive function. So here's the thing. You can eat MCT oil, but can you eat enough? Can you make enough that it actually makes a difference in this? And the answer is yes. So this is mild memory problems. This is 30 grams a day. How much is 30 grams? It's 2 tablespoons. So can you take 2 tablespoons of MCT oil? And what this does is it moves you back up into the energy range where your mind can start functioning normally. And then if you take 45 grams a day, that's about 3, did I say teaspoons? Tablespoons. And so this is 15 is in the tablespoons. This is 2 tablespoons. This is 3 tablespoons. Look how far it moves it up in here to the normal functioning range. Wow, can you actually improve your mental function by taking coconut oil, MCT oil? This study showed you could. Isn't that nice? You can find studies that actually answer the questions that I have. And then this is a study from Molecular and Cellular Cardiology. I'm going to put one heart study in here. And this looks at intermittent fasting improves survival of those that have had a heart attack. So we looked at someone taking chemotherapy, and now we're going to look at some people who are actually had a myocardial infarction. What does it do? What this shows, here's 25 days after the myocardial infarction, 50, 75, and 100. And so the red is looking at the control, and they didn't do any fasting. So you can see after 25 days, they were still alive, and you get to 50 days, 75 days, 100 days, and the survival rate is 20%. And then you look at this fasting, and then the fasted people after 50, 75 days, 100 days, the survival rate is about 90 compared to those that didn't fast at 20. So this is an amazing study too. Fasting seems to work in so many different ways. People say, what should I fast for? Well, pretty much anything, you know? And we haven't even talked about the spiritual parts of fasting. We skipped all of the beginning of Isaiah 58 and we got to verse 8. And all we're talking about right now is Isaiah 58:8. What does it do? Okay, that is a brief overview of fasting, autophagy, ketosis, and some of the overall benefits of fasting. And we'll come back with a little more of this depending on what questions we get.